All right, all right. Welcome. Hello, I'm Tom Sinclair, that VidBlaster guy. It is a treat to be with you today and to bring out. we are had so much fun in pre-show. It's hard for me to get focused again. You know, Streaming Idiots is one of my favorite shows because we get to talk about just about anything to do with streaming. Whether it's software or hardware or cameras or capture cards or mics or mixers or just the how-to with all that stuff. And so it's always fun to talk about that. It's going to be even more fun today because we've got a really special guest, Eric Norrell from AJA Video Systems. If you're familiar with AJA, AJA, as you know, is high-end video equipment. And it's really unusual that somebody like Eric would come slumming down with us because, you know, we're kind of the bottom feeders in the streaming world. You know, we're the ones that are figuring out how to do all this with easy caps and inexpensive cards. But as we get older and as we mature in this industry, we're going to want to know what the next steps are. And AJA Video Systems represents the professional level of broadcasting, but it's going to give you an idea of the kinds of equipment that's out there and an idea of, you know, what you may want to be saving for in the future. I had the experience. Eric was kind enough to send me the Kona 4-port capture card. It's a 4K card, of which I can barely do a half a K. So it was a lot of it was lost on me. But it was such a joy to plug this card into a new PC. I built a test bed to handle that and some other stuff that we're working on, and plug the mini converters in. Plug my little Canon HF100 HDMI Handycam in, and everything worked perfectly the first time. In fact, the image that you see now is that Canon HF100. I bought this guy for like $90 on eBay, and it's got an HDMI cable going out to the AJA mini converter. It takes HDMI and converts it to SDI that Eric so kindly loaned me, and it plugs into the back of the card in a mini BNC kind of connection. I'll let Eric talk more about that. But it was so simple and it worked so beautifully. And as you can see, it's doing a great job. Now today, if you're watching the live broadcast, we suffered some bandwidth issues. We had some power failures in the neighborhood over the weekend due to some big storms. So our normally robust 20 to 30 megs of uplink is now down to about 3 or 3.5. So we had to cut back the video quality of the live broadcast as a result. But if you're watching this on YouTube, and by the way, I hope you'll subscribe, this is being recorded and will be up at YouTube at 720p. If you're watching us on a mobile device, you can go to our website and there's a 180p stream that you can use that won't steal all your bandwidth. If you're like Andrew, you're watching us in the train on the way to work in Australia where it's 6 o'clock in the morning. Let's see. I bumped into Eric a long time ago when he was with another company. So let's don't talk about him. Let's bring him into the show, and we'll bring in his mic. And Eric, welcome to the broadcast.
Well, thanks, Tom. It's great to be here.
Now, Eric, you're out in California.
That's right. Yeah, we're out in Grass Valley, California. In the world of traditional broadcast, it's long been a place where switchers and various pieces of equipment have been built. And ironically, it's also where both AJA and my former employer, Telestream, which you were alluding to a little bit there, and I actually got into streaming and live web production working on Wirecast and other applications, primarily Wirecast. And it's kind of cool just to see all this kind of video technology still happening in this random little town up in Northern California.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. So you went to AJA, and you are a project manager, product manager?
Product manager.
Product manager.
Although really that is just managing a lot of projects. And so I am the manager of a few of our different little gray boxes, various little converters, and I also work on any of our streaming integrations, whether that's with Kona or any of our other products.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Well, tell us about this little gem that you've shipped me. I'm gonna cut to a picture of the back of it while you talk about it a little bit.
Totally. Well, that's one of the most exciting cards that is actually out in the market today for multi-channel capture or playout. With an application like Wirecast or vMix, which are a couple we've integrated with, you can actually use it for multiple channels of SD or HD. As you know, I'm not going to, hopefully no one is streaming 4K way better than anyone else out there right now. But as we talk about 4K cards, at least my uses of our 4K hardware is all going to be for HD multi-channel capture and streaming. And the Kona 4 does a great job of that, since it has 4 BNC spigots right there on the back.
All right. Now, for the folks that don't know, tell us about what's going on, what we see in the picture right now of this card. We've got 4 mini BNC connectors.
Totally, and what we've got there on the back of that card, you see that white connector that I would describe as looking sort of like a DVI connector. It's not a DVI connector. It actually goes with that giant Medusa cable, as I call it. But we can talk more about that giant cable, which has a bunch of our different connectors on it right there.
Yeah, there it is.
That has a lot of our different audio connectors, RS422, as well as component outputs for monitoring. In terms of a wire, using something like a Wirecast or a streaming application, really that cable is generally not going to be used too much. That's going to be if you are embedding audio with one of the feeds that might come into play. But generally speaking, most camera feeds are coming in embedded on the SDI connectors on the back of that card.
Gotcha.
And what you see right there is our HI5 Plus, which is a great little converter that'll spin an HDMI signal up to 1080p 60 and give you a clean 3G SDI signal output. Or, as in your example, taking a camcorder or an HDMI feed and converting that to SDI to run into our capture card there.
Okay, now Eric, how much? I mean, one of the issues that always seems to surround building a PC for broadcasting and using a software switcher like Wirecast or vMix is the CPU use. And what kind of processing is going on this card so that the CPU doesn't have to carry the load?
Well, that's a great question, and we're actually not doing a ton of processing on the card.
Really? Okay.
Depending on what's happening, basically what we're doing is handing uncompressed video signals to the software application, whether that's VidBlaster or vMix or Wirecast. For example, in vMix, something that Martin Sinclair has put together, he does such a good job of using the GPU in the computer that he does all the processing so much more effectively than we could. So we basically just hand him the data, which in this case uncompressed video streams, and he can compress those and deinterlace them and handle all of that with incredible efficiency. I mean, you've used vMix. I'm sure some of your viewers out there have used it. It's a pretty cool application.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Okay. So it's uncompressed video. You're not losing any of the quality. All of that's being passed through to vMix or Wirecast to process from there.
Correct, and it's kind of an old production adage, which I first heard actually in like theater arts when I was in high school and college. But garbage in, garbage out. You want to start, and who knows what you'll get out. A lot of the best foot forwards don't always end up with maybe they end up with a rake in the face, but. What you do is you try to give them the best quality of signal so that, bandwidth issues on the broadcast, whatever other issues happen, you still can provide the best quality that you can put out there.
Gotcha. Okay, I like that. So you're familiar with what we're doing here in this show, kind of a studio show. I showed, I don't know if you saw earlier, but I was showing off some of the other cameras that I've got connected Here's one that's off to one side, and that's hooked up to your card through one of your mini converters. Here's another one to another side, hooked up to your card through mini converters. And how would a card like this work for me? I mean, long term, what would be the benefit for me to have a card like this in the studio, other than the obvious high quality and ease of operation? What else can I do with it?
Those things are obviously something we want. The thing that I like about it is, at least with SDI, you do have the flexibility of being able to take that machine out in the field. You're doing a studio show, so maybe that's not a need today. But you could easily take that machine or a machine in a ruggedized, case of some kind. And SDI is really nice because it does allow, 100 meters on 3G or even farther on SD. Whereas HDMI, when you're in a live environment, HDMI are a friction connector, and that's generally speaking going to be fine. But if you've got some guy running by to put a mic on the guy on the stage and kicks out all your HDMI cables, suddenly you're chasing feeds and you're trying to figure that out. Another nice thing about SDI is it is, at least with our cards, bidirectional. So if you're using our card and you need a program output, those 4 SDI spigots on that Kona 4 card can be used however you want. So in vMix, they could be 4 inputs, or they could be 1 input and 3 outputs. We're currently working on our Wirecast plugin for program feed output, which I've been playing around with in beta the last couple weeks, and we're very excited to bring that functionality with the program feed output to all of our Wirecast users on both Mac and PC.
So you guys have got this existing hardware, and you're continuing to develop it almost internally. So just a driver update or some sort of...
So like on our Wirecast plugin, something like this IO4K, and Wirecast being very Mac-centric in a lot of my circles. This is a Thunderbolt 2 box, which you can really think of as a Kona 4 in a pretty sleek aluminum Thunderbolt wrapper. But it's got the same 4 BNC inputs, and it actually has an HDMI input on it as well. So that only gives you a total of 4 inputs split between 5 different connectors, but you can select that in the user interface in vMix or Wirecast if you're using a Thunderbolt Windows machine. And you've got a pretty compelling little Go kit here with a laptop in this IO4K, which we've been really happy with the response on this box with various streaming applications, but especially with vMix and Wirecast this year. They've been eating this thing up, and it's been fantastic.
I bet. Eric, I got a birthday coming up. I want one of those for sure. Now, do you guys have a recommended laptop to work with that device?
Well, we have several. Generally, we have to default to the application's minimum recommended specs. I know Martin Sinclair and the vMix guys, they've done an amazing job, and they've tested thoroughly 7 different Windows laptops. They have a Thunderbolt 1 category and a Thunderbolt 2 category, and they've been a great reference for me. Traditionally, I've been way more Mac-based, which, as you know, that is generally speaking, at least in the do-it-yourself streaming community, that's a bit of a price threshold to get into Mac worlds.
Right.
And so I build my own computers. I've hacked used EasyCaps with third-party drivers on Mac and all sorts of other things. There's a lot of weird stuff, digital duct tape, as it were, to get signals into the computer to get them out there. And it's really nice when you can just bring 4 signals in HD on one thing with one Thunderbolt connector to your computer. I even have fiber optic Thunderbolt cable, which I have about a 50 meter, let's call it 48 yards. So I can actually run all my cameras away, one fiber optic cable into my laptop, and that's a pretty nice little system. I'm even only usually doing 1 or 2 cameras, but it's nice to have that flexibility to do 4.
That is awesome. I mean, I can see in the sporting world, you can do a beautiful HD production with a laptop. And what was the name of that box again?
This is the IO4K.
IO4K.
It's just a Kona 4 in this wrapper, essentially.
Okay.
traditionally our I/O products have been more Mac focused, and they had been FireWire and then PCIe, like Express 34, those little things that they used to do. And then with Thunderbolt, we have basically what Thunderbolt is basically is a PCIe bus extension. So rather than having something sitting like your Kona 4 in your PC there, this is a little bit different, but basically a Kona 4 in a wrapper here. So here's my PCIe slot. It's got headphone jacks on the front, which is really nice, and it actually is DC powerable, so you can power this off a battery and your laptop, which is pretty nice for portable production.
Wow. That's amazing.
And it's also great if you're doing 4K post-production and all of those things, which, I obviously have a huge appreciation for all that, because I have no real post-production knowledge or skill, other than I enjoy things that are well-produced, and I like to ingest media and TV.
Right. Understood. Okay. All right. Well, we may come back to the whole Kona 4 base here in just a second, but tell me about some of the other things that you guys are working on.
Certainly. Well, we do a lot of different things. Some of the products I'm pretty excited about. Let's see if I have one here. I don't, but I have one that's the same size, and it looks very similar. And if you don't look at it too closely, you can't read that it's not it. We make a lot of these different little boxes, and I have the privilege to work on a couple of them. And this one here we call our ROI, R-O-I, which tends to confuse people in some ways, but that stands for region of interest, which basically means, if you look at the connectors, this takes a DVI connector in. So this would be for capturing a computer signal. A region of interest means that I could take any subsection of my screen, and I can actually output that on my SDI signal here. So, this is fantastic for capturing a Skype window or capturing a YouTube window or whatever computer you're playing your videos out, and you want to use that as a media playout server. Well, with this, it is now a media playout server. I mean, an iTunes window, as long as it's not content that you may have acquired some other way than creating it yourself, this will let you take, with an adapter, it'll take an HDMI input as well. We just released a DisplayPort version of this product. And, a lot of people use these for all sorts of crazy things like teleprompters. I use it to take videos from computer and get them into my Kona 4, my other SDI capture device, to use with various streaming softwares. I mean, the two I use the most are Wirecast and vMix, but it works with a lot of different things. And this is cool because it doesn't actually have to integrate with the computer or the speaker's computer. If you're doing a keynote presentation or something, you're just taking a DVI input from their computer, and you can actually control the region of interest via USB off of a different computer. So hopefully that's not too out there conceptually, but this is a scan converter that will get your computer into an SDI signal for use.
Awesome. I'm loving it. What else?
So that one's fantastic. Again, we just released the DisplayPort version of that, which we call ROI DP, and this is ROI, region of interest. You are familiar with the HA5 Plus, which is our, we take HDMI in and give SDI out. We also use a lot of these Hi5 Plus, and people think, well, why would you need SDI to HDMI monitor? Well, I know that SDI equipment is more expensive, but if you've ever looked at buying an SDI monitor, those are way more expensive than an HDMI monitor. So a lot of times, even top-tier broadcasters, anybody, they just need to see that there's something happening on the video signal in the screen. They'll take their HD SDI and they'll push this out to a Dell monitor or Sony consumer display or whatever HDMI capture device or monitor. So these two are close cousins here. These ones are really popular, and actually this was the first product I ever used when streaming of AJAs. I was using various SDI capture devices, and I hit these guys up for some HA5s or AJ5s. I call them HA5s and high fives because that sounds cooler to me, but you never know.
I got to stop you for just a second. Yeah. So I could take one of those SDI to HDMI converters. Mm-hmm. I could connect it to this Kona card, use the Kona card one of the ports as an output and send a video signal to an HDMI monitor. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct. Yep.
Oh, wow.
And and that's what we're looking to add, or I have it in Wirecast. I'm looking to share it with everyone who uses Wirecast. That's something we're looking to put out there in about the IBC timeframe. So beginning of September, we should have that all ready for public consumption. It's looking great in testing. And that actually does work with vMix today, which is fantastic and something I demo all the time. So we have so many people who just need to do 3 cameras. They need to get one program feed out to run a monitor or a projector or something. And the IO 4K, I keep holding it up, but it's nice. It's absolutely perfect for that. And the Kona 4 too, you've got 3 inputs, you've got 1 output. Obviously, if you need more inputs, you can add another card or mix and match other devices. Most productions today, at least, that I see are a combination of, say, a Skype source, a USB source that's in the studio, an SDI source, an HDMI source, a live web stream source. So it's a mixture and mix and matching, Teradeks with baseband signals, with all of these other things, and with media playout within app. Any of these software streaming production apps. Most of them have built-in replay functionality. Most of them have built-in playlists now. It's very incredible the number of features that folks like Martin with vMix and the Wirecast guys have put together, and Mike with VidBlaster. All these guys are working sort of in parallel and sort of tangentially, but the number of features that are available to you guys, the end users, is absolutely fantastic today. And when I started, and when Tom was getting started 5 or 6 years ago, none of this stuff was easy or made any sense at all. And it was easy caps, and it was that was the only way to do anything, was to take the composite out of a decent video camera, maybe in an HD video camera, but you needed a live output of it, and that was such a trick. I remember the first digital video production I shot was 2001 on a Nikon Coolpix. I think it was 240p, and it could only shoot 2-minute video clips, so you'd have to shoot hundreds of them and then try to put something together. And now an iPhone is so much better than like 90% of devices I've ever used. Even the much malaligned Windows phones are better than any computer that any of us had 5 years ago, for the most part. So it's just incredible how someone might be streaming literally off of an iPhone a live web stream in that Tom can capture via RTSP or RTMP and pull in. I know with the various streaming modules and integrations that exist in these softwares today. It's I'm going to use the word insane. It's insane how cool this stuff is.
All right, Eric. Well, that definitely generates the question. I mean, you've looked back to 2001. You've looked back 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look ahead for a little bit. What do you see in the future?
Well, looking ahead, I see a lot of different things. I mean, everyone is constantly telling me that everything's going to be wireless, and I used to laugh a lot because when I was working on the product Wirecast, we needed a lot of wires to cast anything. And I still think that's going to be true for most professional and higher level productions. There's no wireless technology exists that's as reliable as an SDI cable, and that's why SDI still exists in so many different places. And it's the same thing with HDMI, which is more consumer price approachable than most SDI stuff. But I think the resolutions are going to continue to get bigger. I mean, 4K isn't something that anyone needs to be trying to stream in today, or if you have tried, it's difficult to do with H.264. Obviously, we see a lot of H.265, HEVC chatter online, and what does that really mean? Well, what it means is that HD can be delivered in about half or a quarter the bandwidth, which, as you know, we can never have enough bandwidth. So if we can, improve compression and improve bandwidth, maybe we can get close to having almost enough. But I definitely see some of these technologies which will be applicable to 4K, like HEVC, H.265, which everyone calls it one or the other. It's like 4K and UHD. No one really knows what it's called. I call it UHD. And I call it HEVC or H.265. It doesn't really matter. But what does matter is it's going to be delivering better looking video with less bandwidth to all of us soon. And then 4K, I think, at least in streaming, will be a couple years down the road still, but not something to sleep on, because it will be here faster than you think.
You know, it's really interesting. I was talking with somebody the other day who had purchased a camera that was capable of 4K because they wanted to be future proof. And, you know, I was like, man, I just don't see bandwidth and compression being there. But here Eric's saying it's going to be a couple of years. A couple of years.
Don't run out and fill out your queue right now and start buying stuff. But I think, and in streaming, there's still so many people who are trying to get to where they're delivering a good HD 720 or 1080p picture.
Sure.
And especially, I mean, as you viewers know, I watch all sorts of web streaming stuff. Having the bandwidth at home or on your device, it doesn't matter how amazingly produced, Tom puts together a show if you can't watch it at home. Or you have to download it, which, that I used to download shows all the time before watching them, because I had 1.5 megabit horrible home connection. I lived way out in the middle of nowhere, and I could watch like one YouTube if I buffered it, which was great. I loved it. I cut the cable then, and then I moved into town and got a 20 or 30 megabit connection when I first moved in, and then I could actually stream stuff again, which was really exciting. But I see a lot of this stuff. Obviously technology moves very quickly, but just the advent of all the mobile cameras going 4K pretty quickly, a lot of the Androids, the GoPros, these are technologies that proliferate a lot faster because they're in the consumer space. And I think they actually are going to be driving broadcast to move to 4K. When everyone sitting at home is like, well, I can watch 4K videos I've shot on my phone. Why can't you send them to me? Netflix actually does send 4K videos. But I think it's going to be interesting as consumer demand, I think, is going to be out in front of, and a lot of people compare this to 3D, and I think it is similar in 3D, where there were very loud bunch of consumers that sort of ran away and got everyone excited about 3D, but 3D is more of an experience that requires like something like Avatar to truly make it a useful experience or maybe not useful, but a better experience for a lot of people. And we haven't really seen another Avatar. I mean, they're working on one. We'll see if it's any good. But with 4K, everyone can see that there's more pixels. Everyone can see that there's more. You're getting more information presented to you. And like I go over to my mom's house, she still has an SD television. One of my favorite TVs actually was a Sony flat screen, but it's still SD. It was a tube flat screen, weird thing. And I explained like, oh man, you got to see a 4K TV someday. It doesn't even make sense to her, but I can't wait until I bring her over here and I show her our 85-inch 4K television and show her some stuff we shot on our digital cinema camera in 4K, with really deep color and all that. It's an impressive experience, and it's really not something that can be well communicated right now with like a jittery, buffery stream. It really isn't worth trying to stream in 4K for almost anyone. There have been some really cool kind of cutting edge things around the World Cup and the Olympics and some of that stuff, but that's not the webcast streaming. That's broadcast guys using satellites in some cases, and they're running into the same bandwidth issues, and they have a lot more bandwidth available to them on some of these back channels. But I think you will see more and more, especially as some of these international large broadcast events like World Cup and the Olympics. These really drive a lot of the standards conversions, and a lot of they see like, oh, what have these guys been doing in Japan? Oh, they're broadcasting in 8K P120. Well, what are we doing? We're doing 1080p 30, so something's wrong. So it's just kind of interesting to see, and my background is web streaming. I'm also a member of SEMTI, and I work in a great deal with broadcast engineering and traditional, if you want to call it traditional ways of distributing video, all of which are really all this whole IP thing really confuses people, because we're just trying to get videos on different screens with whatever exists. I see 4K being a great thing. I think it's going to hit the movies and the TV screens quicker, and it will be in our world and in our grasp within a couple of years, though.
Awesome. Awesome.
Hopefully none of that was too insane.
No. What it means is, we've got to check back with you in about 6 months or a year and say, okay, Eric, based on what you said a year ago, how much of that has come true and how much of that do you think is coming down the pike?
Totally. Well, I thought it was funny. As soon as I got here, the number one thing I wanted was multi-channel HD and even SD on the Kona 4 and on some of these cards. And it was funny, like, well, we just made this really high-end 4K post-production card. That's fantastic. Well, we needed to do this. And I was really excited that our engineering team was able to sort of break those channels apart, and we were able to use the cards for, we have an 8-channel card, the Corvid 88, which can do that stuff too. So you really have 8 independent channels. So if you want 4 inputs, 4 outputs, 2 inputs, 6 outputs, that's what that card can do. And so we have a lot of folks building systems around that for, we actually had a guy show up last week. We don't have a lot of drop-in customers. We're not, we're located up here in the hills and all that. And we had a guy drop in with a custom-built little case, similar, Tom, to what you have there, but sort of just a smaller version of that with a Corvid 88 card. He was running vMix, and he had a couple of questions. His question was, can I get one that has a smaller bracket on it or a bigger bracket? So I forget which one. I actually have a Corvid 88 sitting right here. He had the one with the wrong bracket. So I can't remember if he needed a taller one or a shorter one, but here's 8 PCIe, 8 HDSCI inputs, bidirectional, one tiny half-height PCIe card. You can really put this in a 2RU server if you're doing a unit like that, or like this guy was doing. He just had a small, I would say about a third the size of that tower you have there, Tom, in the pictures. And he was putting together a bunch of these systems for cool little streaming systems it was a side job that he was starting. And obviously we were very ecstatic for him to show off the system and support him in his efforts.
Right. Okay, Eric, if I want one of your cards and I'm sitting out there and I just won the lottery and I want to buy one of your cards, where do I go to get one?
Well, the easiest place to go for most folks, if you go to AJA.com and you can find local resellers. We've got a map, plug in your locale, and we'll find someone in your neck of the woods, depending on where that is. We also are sold by B&H and a lot of these big, you'll find our stuff online.
Okay.
B&H, Marketech, Full Compass, all are great distributors for us. But it really depends on what you need. Most folks, at least that I talk to, are the kind of folks that find something online, at least in streaming, they kind of figure out what they want, and then they find the best place to buy it. But we also have, if you want to call, we've got human beings here. We'll answer the phone, both at support and on our sales line, and we can help you find a local reseller for you. In fact, I should probably know that number. But, AJA.com, and there's a where to buy button right on the top. But let's see, our direct sales line here, toll free, is going to be 1-800-251-4224, or direct is going to be area code 530-274-2048.
All right.
I would say operators are standing by. We're not that big of a company. We do have people standing by.
There's an operator standing by if she didn't go to lunch. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
But when you buy AJA gear, you do get to talk to regular humans if you have support or if you have issues, and if you've got technical questions. We've got great pre-sales people who sit 15 or 20 feet that way through a wall, and we're here to help. I answer vMix and Wirecast questions all the time. I help our support techs on those. And any streaming application that we don't integrate with, please blow up our support line. Ask for it, because the only way I can, help move on these things is to have the customer feedback on what you want. I know, we make a lot of different cool stuff that people want to integrate with various things, and we want to provide solutions there, or find someone who can provide a solution for you. Because we do work with integrators. I know most of you guys are pretty technical and can figure stuff out, but we're always happy to work with you.
Cool, man. Well, Eric, as much as I'd love to continue this conversation, we are out of time. But perhaps you would come back on the show at some point in the future.
Oh, I'd be happy to anytime, Tom. I just put my email in the chat there too. So if anyone's got questions, my name's Eric. Feel free to reach out. ideally video questions, but whatever.
Gotcha.
Always happy to talk streaming, and if there's product feedback, you've used our things, want them to do other things, always out ready to chat on that stuff.
Great. Folks, this has been Eric Norrell with AJA Video Systems out in Grass Valley, California, and we've been talking about the Kona 4 capture device. Awesome beast. And, one of the reasons why I hate to see this conversation come to an end, Eric, is it means that I've got to send this card back to you.
Well,
so
we
I guess
can talk about that after.
It's going to have to be in the mail here before too long. But folks, join me in thanking Eric for coming on the show today. He really did a great job, and we look forward to having him back again at some point in the future. If you're interested in those cards, again, he mentioned B&H and Martech and Full Compass, as well as the AJA.com website is a good source to find other resellers. It might be worth finding a reseller in your area, somebody that would have some expertise and could offer maybe a little bit more than just buying it online at B&H. So check out all of those different opportunities when you can. And we're going to have to close out the broadcast now. So thanks for watching. It's been a treat to be with you today, and look forward to seeing you again next week on Streaming Idiots.